So, welcome to our slightly delayed fireside chat. I'm very happy that you're still here. So, I have the pleasure to moderate this amazing group here of people. So, just to give you a very short welcome. So, I am very happy to have here Hoda Khzaimi. Thank you very much for being here. She's an internationally recognized expert for cybersecurity, but she's also very much in policy economy. So the list of her achievements is incredibly long. So she's more than welcome here. Thank you so much for being with us. We also have Professor Mauritz, who is the founder and director of the Stanford Center for Responsible Quantum Research. So we will talk a lot about responsibility and policy here. And next to me we have Professor Urs, who is the dean and also director of the TUM School of Social Science and Technologies. So welcome everybody. So at this conference we've been hearing a lot of discussions actually about quantum technologies, the future of quantum technologies and where this goes. In this session we are taking a little bit a different angle at this topic, because our angle today will be to say, okay, how do we make that quantum leap forward? Okay, so we have a paradigm shift and we need to also see how we deal with the unimaginable future we have a little bit with these technologies. So I would really much to ask all of you our first question. So we have a lot of opportunities and challenges with these technologies. And what we can see basically is that we often fail to reflect the urgency with these technologies. So what do you think? What's your take on what are the biggest chances and on the other hand, the biggest challenges we currently have to deal with, and specifically at the national level, because you're all dealing in very different ecosystems with the same topic. So Hoda, would you give us the pleasure to start?
Thank you so much, Fabienne, and thank you for everyone who's part of the community today. I think it's hard to just, abstract everything in terms of the challenges we see within the quantum ecosystem in a few words. But I think one of the major flagship challenges that we deal with is understanding the maturity structure and the growth structure of the cycle of hardware readiness and software readiness for quantum. And what is exactly hardware or software, and how is it disrupting the current computing cycle? Understanding as well the energy needs and what kind of disruption we need to create and the underlying layers of that, because quantum energy structures that need to be specific and customized to quantum, they're not as by the de facto quantum energy distribution models that we have now. And we need to definitely rework the energy distribution or energy generation that's happening from different minerals of structure than what we're seeing today in order to fit into that model of optimization, and we're not doing it. We're using the same classical old energy structure models, and then we're seeing the same kind of a trend that we've seen across other emerging technologies, where emerging technology is taking, a heavy amount of energy out of what's the current stack is developing. As well, the equity structure of the asset development, how equitable this asset development towards, global economy. I mean, the lead at the moment is in the United States with the level of investment. I think globally we have a 35 billion, if it's not more, for quantum investments. China is allocating 15 billion for that, and the United States is something else with Europe. Only Europe is the only kind of continent that have that kind of flagship program with Rwanda and other African countries. I think it was 1 billion euros to establish collaborations in order to build the quantum assets across the continents. And we need to see more of those programs that are not just in the policy making sphere, but more into the science and research and development sphere, to make sure that we all collectively grow together in terms of building quantum maturity across the space. I will leave it to this, and my colleagues could, go over for the rest.
Thank you very much. So I will go on with Mauritz. So you say, okay, we need a new global policy framework here. And so why do you think it is so urgent, because we've seen a lot of challenges here, to establish a specifically tailored to quantum framework here in policy?
Thank you, Fabienne, and I feel honored to be a part of this esteemed panel and to participate in this amazing conference. The biggest challenges in quantum technology really include the technical hurdles, like achieving qubit stability and error correction, and build scalable quantum computers and connect those to each other to get the quantum internet. Additionally, there is a significant need for developing robust governance frameworks that can keep up with the incredible pace of exponential innovation and technology convergence we see happening in the field to address ethical concerns, security risks, and equitable access, ensuring that the technology benefits society as a whole, meaning all groups. So we need to make policymakers understand they should prepare for the quantum era today and invest heavily in responsible quantum technology, flanked by guardrails such as adaptive regulatory frameworks that let innovation breathe, yet provide legal certainty to developers and companies.
Thank you very much. So we already, you see, we have having a wide range here because we already talked about, energy, hardware, software, etc. So you've been working with a lot of policies. You've been working a lot also with AI. So what do you think are the unique challenges here coming with quantum technologies, specifically also maybe in comparison to AI?
Yes, thank you. Delighted to be here. It's a terrific question. So I've been following different technological innovation cycles. That's just telling you how old I am, starting with digital and now somehow arriving at quantum. And I'm asking myself this question all the time. What is different about each new cycle of technological innovation and social adaptation as we move from one thing to the next? And if I would have to boil it down to one keyword, I would say discontinuity. That when it comes to quantum technology, even more so than with AI, there are potential discontinuities at the horizon. And that's a huge challenge for governance making and for policy making, because if you think about it, we are good as societies to develop policies when we know where we want to go and when we know what tools and mechanisms and instruments we can deploy that get us to that point. Now, with quantum technology, I think there are so many unknown unknowns right now that it's very hard to say where do you want to go, because these technologies can be used for very different purposes. They're extremely complex, of course. They're interacting with other technologies, whether it's neurotech or AI, obviously. So that even like the understanding what's the societal goal as we develop these technologies, second generation quantum technologies, is kind of uncertain. And definitely uncertain is also what are the best policies to put forward to get us there. You mentioned already like some of the challenges and that we need safeguards, but what safeguards? Is it technical standards? Is it ethical principles? Is it regulation and law, or all of the above, and in what order? Is it incentive-based? Is it more like using, traditional command and control frameworks? So I think that's the meta-complexity, right? That we have a sense collectively, this is an amazing, powerful technology in the making, but yet we have difficulties to steer it in a direction that will benefit all humans and the planet. And we have the additional challenge that we're not sure exactly what tools to deploy.
So you see, it's a very easy topic we are dealing here with, and there are, just a few challenges. So in 20 minutes we will have resolved everything. No worries. No, I'm joking. So you've been talking about the challenges, and we know already, in the United States and Europe, we are facing these challenges in very equipped countries, and still we don't really know how to solve the problems. And I know that responsibility is very close to all of your hearts, but also the majority world. And So I want to say, okay, so we have all of you are specifically working in the field of emerging technologies for a long time, and you're all very, very experienced here. So I would really like to know, so how do you see basically the development, upcoming challenges for the majority world, and how can we basically get these countries on the table? So what can we do for countries with even a less developed ecosystem here? So I would really like to see, okay, and what role do you see for international cooperation there? Would you?
I think in the arena of international collaboration for governance for emerging technology, we're doing quite better than the former years, I would say. The conversation around those technologies and the necessity of having what we call global north and global south meet at a point where the technology readiness is not just developed within, for example, the global north and utilized and consumed in global south is quite a necessity. We have the UN establishing correlations, establishing alliances for AI, and I'm hoping that, and there is as well the UN working group for quantum and post-quantum technologies. There is the open-ended working group within the UN that we participated in, and they were conversing around the ICT readiness infrastructure. And within that conversation, you could see that there is a global appetite to considering quantum readiness across the mass for most of the sectors and governmental and national, on a governmental and national level. Now, what we are lacking at the moment is having that kind of a global governance being set in a formalized legal structure on a global level. We don't have that, unfortunately, for any of the technological aspects. We don't have a global treaty. We don't have a global, I would say, map for that. The ITU is doing their best into ranking readiness, but I don't see that happening for emerging technology. Is it good or is it bad? When you build technology, you need a little bit a degree of a freedom in order to be able to test and, as well validate the technology before you bring it to market. But unfortunately, what we see today is a fragmented reality, because you build a technology and you put a hardware into the hand of the user and you tell them this is a quantum ready, this is a quantum safe hardware. But how can we validate that it is a quantum safe, that's a quantum ready? And we make sure that source of validation will follow one global benchmark to make sure that if we cross jurisdiction, this validation and test of the security elements, of the usability and computational element would withstand the global norms. And this is why we need global governance across map for those aspects. I'm not going to get and delve into the details of the security aspects. Maybe we can talk about them later on.
Thank you. Urs, what's your take on that?
So if you want to jump in and talk about the technical standards.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think that you are much more qualified than me to talk about the world majority countries aspect than me. And it's always such a pleasure to work together on these topics. Before that, and thank you, I want to really dive a little bit deeper and make the audience aware of the quantum-specific governance challenges that the world faces. And that is that all matter is governed by quantum theory, and the complementarity principle teaches us that the past is a dot, but the future is a waveform of potential states. And anything can happen, including exotic phenomena interpreted by ancient civilizations as miracles. Now, good luck with creating policy frameworks for that, and religion comes to mind even. Quantum technology is unique because it leverages the principles of quantum mechanics like superpositioning and entanglement and tunneling, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and indeterminacy, complementarity, energy quantization to perform tasks beyond the capabilities of classical technologies in both qualitative ways, meaning more power, fidelity, and speed, but also in qualitative ways, novel functionality and capabilities beyond human intuition. As our DNA, as we sit here today, is clocked for the macro level Newtonian physics world. And this is unprecedented and counterintuitive, and it's difficult to feel. So on the other hand, we may be walking quantum computers ourselves, as our brains are capable of macroscopic quantum coherence, and consciousness might not just be a human property, but a property of matter itself. In this panel, we want to go back to real-world use cases, and I think that quantum technology's potential to revolutionize computing, communication, networking, and sensing, and AI presents unprecedented opportunities and challenges that require entirely new approaches to innovation and governance for all countries of our world.
Fabienne, if I may just pick it up and try to tie together the two statements, right? So you were asking, like, what are the global implications? Do we need some sort of a global framework? And I would agree that challenges and opportunities suggest that, yes, we need some sort of to think about this as a universal and global opportunity, and also address the risks appropriately. The question is, however, how to get there. And I'd say there are strong arguments to advocate for what you alluded to, which is to say, in a first step, to think about technical standardization. Can we agree on a set of standards, for instance, to test the safety of products, let's say quantum-based medical devices, right, as an illustration? I think to go from the technical to the social and really create robust legal frameworks like the AI Act in Europe, and think something similar like that for quantum-based technologies, and even think about it not only at the regional but global level, I think that's not realistic. I would even go a step further and say it's not only not realistic, but against the backdrop of the uncertainty that I was suggesting in the first statement, it's probably not a good idea. So yes, I would agree with you, we're running into fragmentation, but fragmentation can be an advantage at the moment where we do not know what's the best way forward. Because fragmentation allows you to do one thing in particular, which is to learn from each other. So at this early stage, and given the uncertainty, I don't mind that we are running at the national level and regional levels, almost kind of policy experiments. And I think the key challenge, however, is how do we learn from these policy experiments? How do we learn across jurisdictions? And then over time, as we start to get a better sense and evidence base, what kind of applications are actually really making the way out of the lab, and how do they interact with institutions and other technologies and human beings above all, and how do different regulatory or governance regimes are they fit for purpose? We can then build gradually to something more international. So yes, there is risk and costs with fragmentation, but there is also one huge advantage, that we can use it to learn and improve in an iterative way as we work towards the global regime.
Thank you very much. You see, I even had to cry. That's how much quantum technologies is moving me. And your great answers. No, jokes aside, like we see it's incredibly complex. And you also mentioned like that we most of the time have trouble finding the way forward at the moment. And I personally have the feeling this leads to a very surface-ish, complicated discussion all the time. So we have a lot of people saying, okay, we have something very complex, and then we get somehow stuck there. So if you could choose like one next action and would say, okay, this is the next step we have to do in that journey, what step would that be? Because I know all of you work in very different combinations with centers, with universities, with governance, and I know that you have a good overview on what's going on everywhere, all of you. So what would you say is like, if you could choose the very first next step, what step would that be? Mauritz, what would you like to do?
Yeah, great question. And if I may, I will give you two. And the main two ones in my mind are diversity, in particular women in quantum, bridging the gender gap and the divide with the world majority countries. And the other one is learning to speak each other's language beyond research silos and between us, building bridges of mutual understanding with left brain dominant quantum scientists. Also, the principled approach using universal ethical guidelines that everyone understands in America, in China, in Europe and in the Middle East is crucial. And that's why UNESCO's ethical quantum principles are a good effort. But we also, again, want to avoid, and this is a balancing act as discussed before, a fragmented landscape as seen in AI, whether it be ethical roadmaps, standards, certification schemes, benchmarking efforts, or even hard law and regulation. So harmonization is hard as ethics and social conventions are culturally sensitive, contextual and dynamic. So what is normal now may be very unsalonfähig in the future, and what feels uncomfortable today may be widely accepted tomorrow.
Yeah, very good. And I promise, by the way, because the people who know me now for days, I did not basically say they have to talk about interdisciplinarity. I promise. It was not, it was not staged there. So what would be your take?
I think it's the natural growth of the conversation, right? I totally agree with Mauritz and what you have said. Definitely. I think we need a co-creation space where it's safe for everyone to exist and to provide visibility across the map. Unfortunately, at the moment, the real quantum essence, as Mauritz have just highlighted, is accessible to the elites. And we need to make sure that it's accessible to the mass, where people could talk about it, build it, develop it, and understand it from a granular perspective, so they can get to the realization that you alluded us to understand that we need to break our boxes. We can't build a governance structure to quantum, similarly to what we've done in the past. And we cannot just have a laundry list and recycle everything we've done in the past in terms of other technology. But we need to understand the DNA level and the structure of quantum in order for us to have a specific, I would say, measurable conclusions of when are we really going to have the next quantum computing in the market, and when are we going to have the proper quantum regulation and quantum governance structure. So for me, I would advocate for one visibility structure and one as well co-creation structure for everybody in the map, regulators, scientists, as well as developers into the space.
Thank you. I love that, because I also love how all of you highlight how many people we have on the map. Because I have the feeling most of the time we forget how many people there are. So, Urs, what's your take? I mean, you're yourself a little bit in so many different roles on the map already. So, what's your take?
So I agree with all the points you both made in terms of what's meaningful as a next step and how we should prioritize. If I may just add another additional perspective, which is you both made the point that quantum-based technologies may require a different approach, how we govern it, how we think about unlocking its potential, but also mitigating risk and addressing challenges. And I think that's very true. At the same time, there is something happening in the world that has nothing to do with quantum, which makes it actually much harder to come up with new approaches, right? We live in a time where, our problem is not only AI and quantum. We have wars. We are probably at the brink of further escalation. We have very old-fashioned warfare happening very close to where we live, Fabienne, and and we have growing tensions, and actually we're probably at the moment where the old multilateral system is collapsing, where the very mechanisms we think of when addressing governance challenges of global scale may no longer be available. And so in some ways I think that the challenge is a double challenge. One, yes, there is a set of technology that requires new approaches, but even if that weren't the case, the approaches we typically use, the institutions we need to address these challenges and have built over decades, are no longer available or as effective. And so in some sense you can be an optimist or a pessimist. The pessimist will say, well, good luck to find these new approaches when the whole infrastructure that we used to have in place to develop approaches is no longer available in the same way, and probably it only gets worse. Versus the optimist saying this is a terrific opportunity to really fundamentally rethink governance, not only of technology that is distinct from previous ones, but also in a world that is a very different one and is going to look very different over the next 10, 20 years than it looked the past 10, 20 years. And that requires, and this is probably or is the final point I want to make, I think what we need most is imagination. We need people, particularly young people. Therefore, I'm so excited about the students of our university and many others being here, who have the energy, the foresight, the vision to really think about alternative futures, and then use in a second step the very powerful technologies we have at our hands increasingly to build that future. But I think it has to start with human imagination and not necessarily with like the fancy shiny technology. And then we have a chance to solve both or embrace both opportunities, the one that requires new approaches, but also figuring out how to govern this world where the old approaches to governance are out of the window.
Thank you. So I love that perspective because it gives me also the chance to wrap that up with a little bit of hope here, because we just heard like the last 30 minutes a lot of visions, and I've heard a lot of hope, I heard a lot of work, and I heard a lot of chances. And the last 2 days I had the chance to speak to a lot of incredible young people, of tech enthusiasts, and everybody wants to shape that world and exactly goes with the optimistic way. Even we have to be aware of, the other side. We're sitting here in our bubble, we're experiencing a new vision, but we have to see it's still a vision and we still have to do the work to make it happen. So I hope for everyone here that you enjoyed this visionary talk. Thank you very much for sharing all your visions with me. Find the people around, ask your questions, and thank you very much.